Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to another podcast of the Brew Crew Review. Joining me today, I'm Craig, by the way. Joining me is, of course, one of our good friends and hosts, Vince. How are you doing tonight, Vince?
Hey, Craig, how are you? Do we have Scott on?
I think he might be chiming here at some point. He's been running some errands and what have yous. So hopefully he'll join us and talk some Brewer baseball, because it's a whole lot of fun this time of year as we're coming up on the hot stove season. So I guess to get started, I guess the big news so far in the off season, I guess, is the Brewers have a new GM. They promoted Matt Arnold to GM, so he becomes the 10th GM in the history of the Brewers. And David Stearns did not lose his job, but instead also got promoted to, is it president of baseball operations?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, this is all kind of, to me at least, an issue of semantics, I guess. You know, David Stearns and Matt Arnold have worked very closely together. Obviously, since David Stearns was brought here in 2015, and both of those guys have been a huge part of the Brewers' success, I think, over the past 5 seasons. So, you know, happy for Matt Arnold. I think that it was probably done, if I had to guess, because, you know, he probably has been, I know he's been in consideration for other GM jobs, I think most recently with the Angels. So this is probably a chance to give him that title to keep him in Milwaukee, to kind of keep this brain trust together. I'm sure it involved a financial, you know, upgrade for him as well. So he probably got a raise out of it. Kind of exciting. I know I sent around a trivia question to you guys on our text thread and asked how many other GMs in Brewers history you could name. So we could probably cover that later on in the show, but kind of interesting. I guess I would have assumed in the 51 years of the Brewers that there would have been more than 10 GMs until looking it up. But in any event, congrats to Matt Arnold for officially attending the position. And I'm glad that, you know, it's not because David Stearns left the organization. I think that it's exciting that we've got the same group of guys continuing to work. And that really matches up with our on the field crew as well, with Craig Counsell still being the manager. So it's exciting to see because, you know, as you know, Craig Counsell was brought in by Doug Melvin in one of his last moves before David Stearns took over as GM. So it's good that you've got a relationship that's been built now between Stearns, Arnold, and Craig Counsell on the field. You know, it seems to be a pretty good trifecta.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the main thing is that we're able to, you know, by promoting Arnold, we're able to kind of keep him around, because otherwise I think other teams, and there are a lot of teams with GM openings right now, would be sniffing around. And without him in the position he was, the Brewers do not have the option to block interviews to other teams. That now, as a GM, if a team actually has to request our permission to interview him nowadays, as a GM. So I think that might have been part of the move. But I guess I don't really know behind the scenes. That's kind of speculation. But anyway, I'm excited. I know Arnold originally came from the Tampa Bay Rays organization, and he's got a great baseball mind, and it has really been one of the architects, along with Stearns, of the current club. So I'm excited to see what he can do in the role going forward. But like you said, I think it's going to be a tandem thing and so not much I don't think is going to change as far as the decision making going on going forward. But it's still congratulations to Matt Arnold, our 10th GM in Brewers history, like you mentioned. So, all right. Well, another topic I want to get to. Well, first of all, I guess I guess we probably haven't done a podcast since. I guess I'd like to congratulate Devin Williams, the Brewers relief pitcher, to be named NL Rookie of the Year. Pretty awesome accolades, and I guess I wasn't even expecting it. So congratulations to him. He had an amazing 2020, which not too many people on Earth can say that. So
that's so true. that is so true. And yeah, Devin Williams, what a great year. I mean, we talked about him throughout the season on our podcast, but I tend to take kind of the historical lens with things, and it's really cool. Devin Williams becomes just the third Rookie of the Year in Brewers franchise history, the second National League Rookie of the Year. So he joins Ryan Braun in that category, and Pat Listash overall is the three Rookie of the Year award winners in Brewers franchise history. So kind of cool to see him get that recognition. I'm not one to kind of bemoan the fact that we're in a small market, but I will say that guys, I think in Milwaukee tend to get a little bit, tend to get the short end of the straw, so to speak, just playing in the market that we do. And with the media being, so much more powerful in other cities across the league, it's nice to see that the writers recognize the guy like Devin Williams and his contributions this year. And quite frankly, when you look at his numbers, it shouldn't have been even close. I mean, he was so dominant this year, and I won't say it came out of nowhere, but I think that the level of dominance came out of nowhere to a degree. I think, Brewer fans, including us on this podcast, have talked about the fact that he could be a very quality addition to our bullpen, but to see the numbers he put up, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was like a video game or something. It was crazy.
Speaking of video games, he has a pitch that people around the league are calling the Airbender, which is a pretty awesome name for a pitch. I mean, it's really unhittable.
It's like the old Mississippi mud ball from Tim Dillard.
Yeah, I mean, it's on par with that almost. So it's quite amazing. But, I mean, he was a former first-round pick for the Brewers, but I think he had kind of like fallen under the radar, as far as what because obviously he was groomed as starting pitcher, and that, didn't come to fruition in the minor leagues. But what a great find and an emergence for, out of kind of seemingly nowhere. For the Brewers this year, similar to almost what Trent Grisham, looked like a failed prospect, and all of a sudden came out last year, and we were able to, trade him after his good year. I don't think we'll be doing the same with Devin Williams, our Rookie of the Year. In fact, it kind of segues into my next topic, which, or I should say our next topic, and that is I think the emergence of Devin Williams may give the Brewers top brass the, I guess, more comfortable option as far as possibly the thought of trading Josh Hader. I think they're confident Devin Williams can handle that back of the bullpen role already, after his amazing season. And not only that, but he'll be still on the cheap. So, and then I think conversely, Josh Hader is going to be in his second year of arbitration. And even though we will control, he's going to have 4 arbitration years overall. So he's still under team control for 3 years. I think it's starting to make sense to, I guess, ponder and determine what Josh Hader's future with the Brewers is going to be. So I'd like to talk about that. Hopefully Scott chimes in here. I know he's an expert on this type of a question, but I'm sure you're going to do a great job too, Vince. But I guess I wanted to frame it like this. I think that the Brewers have 3 ways to go forward with this Josh Hader potential, how to deal with it, I guess, going forward. And that would, I'll label them as A, B, and C. Option A, I think, would be to trade him during this offseason for like the biggest package you can get, most likely highlighted by a offensive prospect that could be, franchise cornerstone going forward on the cheap. And option B would be to hold on to him and possibly trade him at this trade deadline if the Brewers aren't indeed in contention, to look at trading him with the idea that you could probably milk more out of a contender at the trade deadline for a top-of-the-line reliever like that, because once teams are in position knowing that they are going to be in playoff position, adding a reliever like Josh Hader is that type of move that can put a team over the top and make a huge difference in the postseason. So I feel that we could even possibly get more at the trading deadline than we could during this offseason when, obviously teams can sign free agent bullpen arms rather than have to, give up quite a bit of their future, which they'll probably have to do to acquire a Josh Hader. So that's option B and might make the most sense to the Brewers. Option C, and one I'm sure most Brewer fans might wish that they take, and maybe they will, and that would be to keep Josh Hader going forward, possibly for all 3 of the next 3 years until we have until it becomes a free agent because, the Brewer, obviously if you look at today's baseball and the success of playoff teams, and the Brewers themselves have made the playoffs 3 years in a row, having, awesome 1-2 punch in the back of the bullpen really makes a huge difference. And to have Hader Williams at the back of the bullpen would make the Brewers that much better if he were to remain a Brewer. But
Yeah.
So that would be option C, I suppose. And so I guess we can discuss on which option, if we were GM of the Brewers, which option we would take, I guess is the question I'd like to propose to you. Vince, here.
It's a tough scenario, Craig, and here it really is. So I think there's a couple things that we know are true, and I guess they could be disproven, but I still think that they're as close to being facts as you can get in this hypothetical scenario. And that one of those things is that Josh Hader's value is never going to be more than it is today. So, I don't think that by waiting, you're going to increase the package that you can get for Hader. The more time that elapses, the less time he has under contract, where he's still arbitration eligible and thus controlled by whatever team acquires him. So I think that in terms of, his value, you're not going to see that increase. So that's, I think, just the reality of the situation, number one. Number two, I think that we need to really start talking about where the Brewers are as a team in terms of their ability to compete. I mean, if we're being honest, I think that, everyone would agree that the only reason that the Brewers were able to make the playoffs for this third consecutive year is that expanded playoff format, which will not exist and presumably not exist in 2021. This isn't a team that's necessarily on the cusp. I hate to say that. I think that you and the guys on this podcast, along with myself, are the biggest Brewer fans that there are. But I do think that also means that we need to be realistic. We've got a number of holes to fill. Our offense is quite frankly, fairly woeful. And I don't know that we're going to find that to be changed a ton going into next season, given our constraints with our payroll. And no fans in the stands in 2020 clearly didn't help that situation. So for those reasons, I guess I would reluctantly want to trade Hader if I was GM of the Brewers. And, yes, Devin Williams can step into that role, and that's fine. And, you are losing I won't say once in a generation talent in Hader, but once very rare type of talent in Hader. And certainly he would improve the club by being on the club. But that being said, I think that you could start to restock that farm system a little bit. It has been depleted. A guy like Hader is your best bet to do that in the quickest way imaginable. And I don't think that David Stearns is going to wait around to do that necessarily. So I think it's likely that he's traded. I think that, again, if I was GM, I'd look into trading Hader unless you've got some weird plan in place that can really bring in at least two offensive pieces that can. I go back to 2019, I guess, and we never have really replaced Yasmani Grandal's production, and we've never really replaced Mike Moustakas' production, and even that wasn't enough to get us past the wild card playoff game. So until we do at least two more bats and another starting pitcher, to me, we're not really on the cusp. So that means that you have to keep retooling, and unfortunately, that means that Josh Hader is probably got to go because he's the guy that's going to be able to help you to retool the quickest.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of points and great analysis there, Vince, that I kind of agree with. I guess the main way to look at it is, unfortunately, especially, you can't ignore the elephant in the room is this year that is COVID that really had an economic impact on the entire world, but the baseball world also, obviously, in particular. And, there was no revenue sharing in 2020 because of it. And I think the Brewers, already had to make some tough decisions with their own, staff and whatnot. And I think that it's pretty obvious that they're going to have to pare payroll back a bit going forward. And with that being said, I think it's really important to realize that Josh Hader is about to get kind of expensive. And we've had him on the very, league minimum pretty much up until last year. and when he, was awarded arbitration for the first time. And now going forward, each of the next 3 years, he's just going to get more expensive and more expensive. And that's just how it works. So rather than have to pay him close to what his, true value is each of these seasons, even though that's still, immense value for a player of his caliber, and most teams wouldn't hesitate to pay that, of course, you could instead look to move him. Unfortunately, since we are a small market, we'd have to, look. I think it's imperative that we use, someone like a dominant closer like he is, to kind of trade him to, like you're saying, restock the farm system, or to identify a major league ready player that could be a cornerstone at a position of need. And as you noticed last year, the Brewers tried to fill their offense with a bunch of bargain bins type players, and it really kind of blew up in their face for the most part. And I don't think they want to go that route again. And they obviously can't sign a long-term, free agent since they just locked up Yelich and whatnot. Or I shouldn't say they can't, but they likely won't. And so I think that the best way to go about that is to flip Hader for package, your best package that you can get. And of course, like I said, option B is kind of enticing, because you could, possibly get more for him at this coming trade deadline. But the problem with that is a couple of things. It makes it just too risky, in my opinion. Number one, he could get injured, obviously, and you don't want that, because if you can't afford to not get something for him, before he would
right.
That. And number,
I don't think he's terribly injury prone. I don't know that his mechanics would lend one to think that. I will also say this: I don't think that it's the Brewers can't afford him. I think that it's more that the team can't afford to not get some quality return for him. And I know that we're still a few years out, obviously, from losing him just to free agency or something of that nature. And I think he's still affordable even for the Brewers in this, during his arbitration years for the most part. But I just worry that we might not, if we do wait and we don't trade him.
Oh yeah, no,
that we're not going to
and what I'm saying
get
is
some value for
that
him.
increased salary just adds a couple. They're definitely willing to pay it, but I'm just saying that it adds a little bit more of the payroll where they'd have to take out.
Right.
And especially
right. No,
since
100%.
Since they're pairing back, but no, that your point is pretty much the one I'm trying to bring home here. Also, is the fact that you've got a small market team in this economic environment has got to get something of value for Josh Hader that can be part of our future. We just have to. The question is, so I think there's little to no chance of us keeping Josh Hader till the end of his I guess of his arbitration eligibility the next 3 years. There's just no chance, because we have to get something for him before he walks. And so I think that you're right. The sooner you do it, the sooner than the later, the better package you're going to get. And I really think that they need to do it this offseason. Hopefully there's a market for him there.
Yeah.
I would say if you look around baseball, there'll be plenty of teams that will be willing to, acquire a dominant closer and make a run at the playoffs. But, whether or not they're willing to give up what the Brewers would be asking, which I'm sure would be a pretty steep price, is, I guess, another thing. So it's like you could pick one of the options. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's the exact question that I have too. When I talked about, advocating a trade for Hader, I wouldn't advocate just trading him for the sake of trading him, I guess is my point. You don't just need to shed the salary. He's still not that terribly expensive. But so, to me, it comes down to what's being offered in return. I guess there are so many weird things right now about, well, everything, but, even within baseball and baseball economics, we don't really know how the winter is going to shape up. There haven't been many major free agent signings yet. We saw Charlie Morton sign with the Braves today, but outside of him, we haven't really seen too much movement yet. We don't really know, and he got the same figure that the Rays could have locked him down with in arbitration. They could have offered him that salary, I guess. And what I'm getting at is I think that there's so much weirdness with this market. That's the one thing that kind of gives me a little pause and says that the Brewers may wait, just because we don't really know how things are going to shape up. I do think that free agent salaries are going to generally be depressed a bit this offseason, just given the economic uncertainties of the game right now, given the economic uncertainties of the country right now, and given the fact that there was no revenue from fan attendance in 2020, to give teams that little cushion that they need a lot of times to have a certain amount of revenue available for player signings. So that's the one thing that gives me pause, I guess, in thinking that he might be dealt, is just there are so many unknowns. And I don't know that we're going to get an answer to that anytime soon. And that's maybe leading to the second, to your, option B scenario, where maybe he's traded at the deadline, just when there is a little bit more certainty in the marketplace, and we might have a better picture of where things stand. Are we returning back to normal by that point? I don't know, but hopefully. And, we've got those types of things to think about this offseason, unlike any other offseason that we've ever had to deal with before. I mean, this is the first COVID hot stove league, so I think there's a lot that remains to be determined as well. I'd be really interested to hear what our anonymous source, Tom Carter, thinks about all this. So hopefully you talk to him and can give a recap of that too.
Yeah, no, your points are very valid. Like, this is probably the most uncertainty in the offseason that anyone can remember coming up for a lot of reasons. And I guess if I were a ball player, I wouldn't want to be a free agent going into this year necessarily, just because there's so much uncertainty economically. And but with that being said, yeah, I think that the main point, I guess, is the Brewers will keep their options open. They're not just going to pick A, B, or C like I laid out. I think they're going to start, I guess we'll put it, they'll start fielding offers for Hader as of now, if they haven't already. And if they get an offer that they feel they can't pass up, they won't. I guess I'll just put it that way. If they don't get that offer they're looking for
right
this offseason, they're not just going to settle for the package that the best package they can get. Instead, if they want to get full value, and so if they don't get that offer this offseason, I think they will keep him at least until the trade deadline, in hopes of getting that full value package for him by the trade deadline. But I would be really surprised if Josh Hader is still a Milwaukee Brewers at this time next year, like during next offseason. It's possible, but then he's only going to have 2 years of arbitration left. And, like I said, like you pointed out, I should say, more of his team control that goes away, the less value you're probably going to get for him. So there's really no reason to stretch it out. But again, if they go that route and then all of a sudden the Brewers are actually contending come July, then
right,
it'll be really hard to make that move and justify it to the fans. And that's why I really think if I really had to bet money on it, I kind of have a feeling he's going to be gone. He's probably made his last pitch as a Milwaukee Brewer. And not to freak fans out, but that's what I think. But we'll see what happens. It should definitely be interesting.
Well, and that's the thing. Does David Stearns and Matt Arnold have a plan, in place right now that are going to make the Milwaukee Brewers contenders in 2021? I tend to think that we've got too many holes, that there's too much financial uncertainty, that we saw last year just the offense just struggled game after game. And, this roster was built last year in 2020 with a patchwork, series of guys, some of which worked out. I would say Jed Jorko worked out, but, a lot of guys who didn't, Justin Smoke, Logan Morrison, others that, were kind of jettisoned off the roster, even in a 60-game season. So either way, it was built for retooling again this offseason. But when that was done and that decision was made by Stearns, that was pre-COVID. I mean, it was pre-knowing what this market would look like. So now we're faced with the situation of having to do it all again with the economic uncertainties of the current landscape in baseball being in play. And we don't even, at this point, we don't even know who's going to be batting cleanup next year. I just throw that out there. Who's going to be batting cleanup in our lineup?
I think the point that you're really getting at is that, as weird as it is to say, the Brewers made the playoffs in 2020, but really, to me, I think 2020 showed the Brewers brass, so to speak, that the team is not that close to being true contenders.
Right.
Even though there was some murder of some guys like Corbin Burns and obviously Devin Williams, both those guys are, huge emerging young talents that we have control of. But besides that, almost any other, player, there's so many holes. I mean, obviously
Well,
there's still
there
a
are.
there's a hole at third base, first base,
Right.
plenty of them in our rotation, lots of question marks, all the way around. And then you have Ryan Braun's potential shoes to fill, so to speak. And he might be coming back, like I said, but there's just so much uncertainty. It just doesn't feel like we're on the cusp of making a long, deep playoff run with the current roster, and we don't.
No,
I don't feel that we have the money to make ourselves into the contenders with free agent signings this offseason because of the economic environment. And so I think the combination of those things really, leads back to that point of it makes total sense to trade Josh Hader as soon as possible and maximize the return and limit the risk, so to speak.
No, I think that you're right. And even for guys that, are going to be added to this 2021 team that were not really a part of 2020, like Lorenzo Cain, for instance, what can we expect from a guy like Lorenzo? He's aged a year without playing many meaningful baseball games. He had a spring training and he had, I think, 5 games out of the 60 that he played before he opted to go home. And I'm not critiquing his decision, but I am just saying that, not playing essentially for a full year is problematic for guys who get into a routine, who need those reps, who, are used to that grueling schedule. We saw it with Christian Yelich when his schedule was thrown off. He wasn't really able to ever compete like he had in 2018 or 2019. So we really don't know. I just, if I'm David Stearns and Matt Arnold, I'm not thinking that not only are we not on the cusp, but we really don't know what to expect out of guys, even guys that we have significant investments with, like a Lorenzo Cain. And I'm not saying we should be looking for a new center fielder. What I'm saying is that there's just too many unknowns to not, unless you have a plan, unless there's some financial ability to bring guys in that we just don't know of as fans right now, or that our colleague Tom Haudricourt hasn't dug up in his interviews. I just don't know what money we're going to be using to go out on the free agent market and acquire guys to fill those holes right now for 2021. If you have that, then great. Then you keep Josh Hader, and that's a great 1-2 punch at the end of the game, between him and Devin Williams at the back end of a bullpen, no question about it. But, I just don't see where we're going to be able to fill like a 4, 5, 6, 7 hitter in this lineup right now, which we currently don't have. I'm very unsure of what happens after Yelich and Cain at the top of the order at this point. Looking at the guys that we currently have on the roster, and again, I don't see the ability to go out and get these guys on the free agent market, or necessarily even to make trades without trading a guy like Hader to fill some of those other holes. So you certainly have a good core to build around. Burns and Woodruff, I think, are both of those guys have turned into legit 1 and 2 starters. In a top-notch starting rotation. I still think you need to add a third guy probably, because we don't know what we really have in Eric Lauer or Josh Lindblom. But I think that those 2 guys, and if Freddie Peralta can ever put it together, they can make a significant dent in that problem we've always had with starting pitchers. It seems like it's just, this offense is very troubling. Omar Narvaez was disappointing both offensively and defensively last season, so I don't know that I'd put my faith in him and bring him back. There's just so many question marks, even amongst guys that we currently have filled in terms of having guys under contract. And that's not to say anything of guys who we've got as free agents. Jed Jorko is a free agent this year. Other guys that we don't necessarily, who's going to be our 4th outfielder? I guess it's Tyrone Taylor at this point, but Ben Gamble's a free agent. So there's just so many question marks around the diamond right now. And I know it's early in the off season, but I just don't necessarily see the Brewers having the budget to do much, in terms of acquisitions in the next couple months before opening day.
Yeah. 2021 feels, I agree with almost all your points. 2021 really feels like a year to kind of like get back on track and see what we have and kind of cash in some of our chips, and the main chip being Josh Hader, into something that'll help us going forward, right away, and also in 2022. From a different position or whatnot. And so by restocking the farm, they'll just give us ammo when we are ready to be like true contenders, and hoping it's 2020, 2022 and 2023 and beyond, whatever. And that way we'll at least have some more chips in our farm system to make the trades that we need to kind of push us over the top as a small market team. And I just don't feel like we're in position with all the question marks that you mentioned to, be a really strong playoff team in 2021. And that's fine. It's still exciting. We're on the cusp of getting there, but I really think this needs to be like a transitional year. And obviously starting next offseason, I really think that economics will be back on our side overall.
Yeah.
Brewers and baseball. And so this is kind of like a year that I don't think we should go all in, so to speak. And I think that's pretty obvious, but it'll be an exciting year nonetheless, because I'm really, and not even knowing what we did in the offseason yet, but just looking at the guys that are returning, we need, like you mentioned, a nice full comeback year from Lorenzo King. We need his presence in the clubhouse, and we need his veteran presence now with Braun possibly gone, on the field too. And I think that he'll provide that and get back on track. We need Christian Yelich to return to his, at least near his MVP caliber form of the two previous years to 2020, because he was, not his numbers he put up in 2020 and really never getting on track were not even that of a real solid, regular even hardly. So, I think he will do that.
Man, I'm just excited that we might get a chance to actually attend a game in person in 2021. Like the product on the field is far, far less important to me, to be honest. I think,
of course, yeah.
Like many fans, I'm just excited, hopefully, for a return to normalcy by then, and to, actually check out a big league game again would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that one. And so, getting back to Yelich real quick, is like he just needs to have a bounce back year, full year to get back on track. And I think he will this year, which will be great. And I also feel that, like you said, beyond Burns and Woodruff, and again, we're not going to sign a big time free agent. It's just not happening on the starting pitcher or at all probably, but definitely not a starting pitcher. I can almost guarantee you that. And so what does that mean? We have too many question marks beyond those first two guys. So I really feel that 2021 is really going to be a season where the Brewers need to see what they have in some guys like Eric Lauer, who they traded for, like Freddie Peralta still, and like even Adrian Hauser and what role he'll have. So I think we really just need I really feel like we need at least one of those guys to emerge as a controllable rotation piece going forward. And then if we have those three chips in place at the top of our rotation going into 2022, then we can probably open up the purse strings a little bit and bring in a really quality veteran free agent to add to that mix. And then I really feel, that we'll be on our way. And obviously whatever pieces we were to get from Josh Hader would start to develop and all that good stuff. And I also should mention that Keston here had a pretty decent year last year, but I really feel that there's more potential. And I think one more year of experience out of him, he could really break out either this year or into next and, become a basically middle order hitter that we so desperately need. So.
Yeah, definitely. And, all this stuff comes with a grain of salt. Like, we all watched, most of the games, I think, in 2020, but it was such a weird year. I mean, these guys that reported to spring training, then they get sent home from spring training and sit there for several months. And then they come back and they play in stadiums with just a very limited prep period with no fans in a 60-game season, a short sprint. I'm not saying that it was all an aberration, but when I see guys like Christian Yelich struggling, and I'll say it about other guys on other teams too, even guys that I can't stand, like Javier Baez, these are not bad players. It was a weird year, and I think that the lack of normalcy in terms of the training regimen, in terms of a longer season, I think that really hurt guys, and it seems especially offensively rather than just, pitchers. I think that it was really affecting guys like a Christian Yelich, who it seems like really value routine and having that, sort of, you show up at whatever date in mid-February and you kind of work on stuff for 6 weeks, and then you're there and, the beginning of April for a full 162 game season, and you prep yourself to be, healthy and successful over a long season and then get ready for a playoff chase, those were all experiences that were not had last year. So for anybody that was a veteran who, was used to that, and I'll say the same, Ryan Braun, the same way, a guy who's been in the big leagues since 2007. I just think that lack of consistency really hurt a lot of guys last year. So I don't, Yelich obviously struggled, but I don't think we should be judging him necessarily on that per se. So I'm excited to see what this group of guys can do in a 162 game season. I'm not saying that the current group that we have is competitive necessarily, but I am saying that, it'll be good to see, kind of like what you said, if 2021 is what you think it is going to be, and I don't think you're wrong, and it's kind of a, reset year, so to speak, but we've still got a core. There could be worse things for the organization than that. And, you see what happens. You play out the games. I certainly think that even the current group of guys that we have are better than Pittsburgh and certainly can compete with Cincinnati and maybe even better than the Cubs, depending on what they do this offseason. I just think it's going to be really tough to compete with, St. Louis and probably even Cincinnati or Chicago. It's a tough division. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But certainly I don't think that we're good enough to necessarily say, hey, we're going for it this year. We need to keep Josh Hader when we have a viable trade package in front of us, if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, and I kind of really trust our new GM, Matt Arnold, and of course David Stearns working together to get that package that the franchise so desperately would need for Josh Hader, and we definitely need the headliner for a trade like that to be someone that has immense upside that could blossom into a star, so to speak. And I really think that they would probably be targeting someone like that on the offensive end of the game. And obviously, looking at the Brewers' really huge offensive struggles last year, I think that's a huge glaring weakness overall for the organization. And it should go also without saying that the lack of a minor league season, I mean, it's going to hurt all franchises and young players' development throughout baseball, but of course it will the Brewers too. I mean, so I don't think that you can really count on someone that lost a year of development to coming up and just emerging from the minor leagues. I mean, obviously it could happen. And some guys did get to play at the alternative sites or whatnot, but it wasn't the same as, the grind of a full season and competitive play where you learn from a lot of your mistakes as you go, and that's all part of the development. And not having that, I think is going to be, unfortunately, it just feels like all baseball is going to need a year or two to kind of get back on their feet, so to speak. And that's why obviously I wouldn't say the Brewers are going to be going all in 2021. Not that anyone's going to be shocked by that statement, but it just feels that way, and that's fine. But obviously, if we're contenders or on the cusp of contending, the organization will do what it needs to do to try to get us in to the big dance, so to speak.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's any other topics you wanted to cover, Vince. I know we're still waiting for Scott.
We can cover the rest, I think, next week or whenever we tape our next podcast, as soon as Scott's available. I know he's been working hard and running a lot of errands or something, so we'll wait for him on a few things. And
All
Chad
right,
too, of course.
Well, I do have a wrap at 9 here that we should probably get to because I don't think it'll probably be by the next episode. But so we can just go around Robin. I'll have you start off with each one, obviously, and then quick go around the horn here and answer some interesting questions for our listeners.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, let's do it. Did you write these or did our interns?
The interns influenced me in certain ways, but I did come up with most of these on my own.
All right.
So let's do it. First inning. What position would you want the Brewers to most want to upgrade in free agency this offseason?
Third base. We just saw this dearth of production at third last year between I guess Jerko had some, decent games, but I think overall that's not even sustainable. So yeah, I'd say third base.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In most years, this question would be raised, and I'd almost always say starting pitcher. But this year, I agree with you at third base, but I'll just actually say either first base or catcher. Really, but
yeah, It'll be
All right.
interesting to see if Vogelbach is going to come back to the same degree that he was there first last year at the, last few weeks of the season. It's kind of quickly become a fan favorite. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
third base is my
And I
answer.
think when the Brewers acquired him, or gave him a shot, so to speak, out the waiver wire, there was some thought that if he was to merge, we'd have the option of playing him at first base or DH going forward. A little pause off the rapid nine here, just a quick point out to fans if they're not aware. There's still, I thought, the DH coming back in 2021 was like a slam dunk done deal, but apparently, it's not for sure that the DH will even be part of the NL in 2021 season. I know that MLB
Yeah.
should pull that back as a bargaining chip, what I think is stupid, but anyway, I won't go on a Manfred rant right now. Let's go back to the second inning. But that, yeah. So again, yeah, that's just another whole potential stupid thing. But all right, second inning. Okay, name the Brewers catcher that will start the most game for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2021. Manny Pena, Jacob Nottingham, Omar Narvaez, or somebody else.
I think it's got to be somebody else. I mean, now it's probably because I want somebody else, but it'll probably be Narvaez. I really think we need to go out and get somebody else. Narvaez, if he was a great defensive catcher, you could kind of forgive the offensive struggles, but he's not. So you have to then get a bunch of offense from this guy, and he just didn't provide it. Maybe he just had an off year. Maybe he was a guy that, suffered from that lack of routine, but I just wasn't impressed by him last season. In fact, he wasn't even average. He was significantly below average when you look at the numbers. And I think it'll be Narvaez because they won't have any options or won't have a budget to go get somebody else, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, I agree with your assessment. I almost think that there's a strong chance that the Brewers, after the terrible, terrible season he had last year in his first year as a Brewer, that the Brewers might even consider not offering Narvaez arbitration. And we'll see.
And then just hand the starting role to Pena?
Well, or sign someone else, and maybe have Nottingham back up. I think Pena might be gone too.
Yeah.
Unless they're interested in bringing him as backup, but I don't really know, but I guess I'll go with the fact that Stearns isn't willing to eat crow on that one, yeah, or maybe that's not the right phrase, but he's not willing to give up on that trade he made yet. And so therefore, I think Omar Narvaez will go into 2021 as our starting catcher and be given a chance. But I think that they're willing to cut bait, and if he struggles again, maybe giving majority of bats to Nottingham or something like that, and look to sign someone else next offseason. But I think because of the fact that 2021 is like one of those transitional years, like we've been talking about, I think they'll give Narvaez one more crack at it, so to speak, and hope that he can reemerge. So that's my guess. All right, moving on to the third inning here. Now the Brewers did protect a few players, from the upcoming Rule 5 draft here that happens at the winter meetings coming up in a couple of weeks already. I think they may have the option to protect a few more going forward, but I'm pretty sure that it's pretty much set. I think they protected, I know, was it Tyrone Taylor, he was already on the 40-man, but they brought Bettinger and File both onto the 40-man, I believe, and I think I'm forgetting one other person, but one player they didn't bring on was Zach Brown, who's kind of a middling prospect now at this point, but had some hopes of being a rotation piece for the Brewers going forward. I guess the question for the third inning is, yes or no, will Zach Brown be selected by another team in the Rule 5 draft?
I would say yes. I think he will be. I know he's kind of gone up and down as a prospect, but I still think that there's enough teams that have enough roster churn, so to speak, to give him a shot. So yeah, I'll say yes.
Okay. I'll say no. But all right, going on to the fourth inning. In your opinion, who is the best? Obviously, the Brewers were supposed to be celebrating their 50th anniversary last year, which they didn't really make a big deal of it because of COVID or anything. Obviously, couldn't with the fans not there. The 50th year season was actually the year before that. Why they didn't celebrate it then is who knows. But how many more years it'll take before they actually celebrate the 50th. I don't know. But anyway, in the 50 years of the Brewers organization, who do you feel is the best Brewers first baseman of all time? Cecil Cooper, or Prince Fielder?
Wait, Greg Brock isn't an option? Oh, John Jaha?
You can go off the grid.
Okay, no, thanks, man. Oh, man, that's a great question. I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, Prince Fielder, I think, was the most dramatically lineup-changing first baseman that we've had. So maybe you'd have to go with him. But his tenure, unfortunately, was fairly short in Milwaukee. I think Cecil Cooper played 11 seasons with the Brewers, and Prince Fielder played, 5 or 6. So in terms of the organization, I think Cecil Cooper. But in terms of who I'd want, oh man, that's a tough. I'll go with Cooper, but it's really tough.
I struggled also with this. I love both the guys. I mean, Prince Fielder is probably my favorite Brewer, favorite Brewer of all time, and obviously it was in a review heyday. With that being said, I guess I'm still going to say Cecil Cooper myself.
Yeah, I mean that year that Cooper hit like 378 or something, and he lost the batting title to George Brett, who had 398. I mean, but just that consistency, the guy had 2,000 plus hits. I mean, he was just a great defender at first base, whereas Prince was not a great defender, and I just
feel like he's like one of the most underappreciated players in Brewers history, in baseball history, maybe even, and definitely on that 82 team. I feel like he was really a huge star player on that team, and obviously, I think if Fielder would have won a World Series with the Brewers, I'm pretty sure I'd be answering him. But Cooper.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And Cooper's doesn't quite rise to the level of a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. But if you look at the numbers of other guys who've gotten in recently, like a Harold Baines, he's kind of right there. Too bad he played first base, and too bad he played first base in Milwaukee for his case. But just saying.
All right, here's a fifth inning. How many years will it take you to call Miller Park AmFam Field? Either you'll be able to do it right away, 1 to 5 years, or never.
For me, it's not a philosophic thing. Like I get it. Stadiums change names. I get why it was done. I mean, when corporate sponsor leaves, you get another corporate sponsor. I totally get it from a business perspective. I think it's just going to be a force of habit for a while to still call it Miller Park. So, I'm not as upset as some Brewer fans are about this. But I just think force of habit. I'll say 1 to 5 years.
Yeah, you're probably right. That'll probably be what happens to me, but I guess I'm just going to answer never, just because I think it's so ingrained in my brain that Miller Park is Miller Park. I don't know.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, especially for those of us like us who were there when the stadium opened up, with that name. I mean, heck, I've still got my hard construction hat when we were going through Miller Park before it was even done or finished.
I've got that too.
Went into the ticket office and, it's got the Miller Park logo emblazoned on the side. It's just great memories there, obviously, with you guys and others that, can't erase that. It's going to be Miller Park to a degree, forever. But, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right, sixth inning. Which Brewer starting pitcher, I shouldn't even say starting pitcher. Which Brewers pitcher will make more starts in 2021? Adrian Hauser, Eric Lauer, or Freddie Peralta?
I'm going to go with Peralta. I think, some of these questions. Practically speaking, now
I mean, I'm kind of tough.
No, I know. I'm going to go with Hauser. I think they're going to see what they have in Hauser. Peralta I think they're going to do the same with him, but I think they're going to continue him in that weird role of being both a starter and a reliever, depending on the week, which I don't like necessarily, but I think that's what they're going to do. Just seems to be the Brewers' way, certainly with the Stearns Council tandem. So I'll go with Hauser, but I wish Peralta, honestly, if 2021 is going to be kind of a see what we got type of year, I wish that they just throw Peralta in the starting rotation for a full 162 game season and see what happens.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly. Well, I've been beating on the Freddie Peralta drum for a couple of years now, and it hasn't really gone that well. But so that would be my ideal situation is they do that, but I don't know that they will. So I guess out of the three guys, I'm the least high on Adrian Hauser, and I mean, nothing against the guy or anything like that, but so I guess, well, if I had to bet money on this, I'd probably actually go with Eric Lauer. I think that, again, it could just be a Stearns thing. I mean, he traded for him. I think he wants to see what he's got in him at the major league level. He's already got major league experience with the Padres and whatnot. I think that they're just going to, as long as he's healthy, obviously that's a concern. And what this, the true answer will probably be with the three of these guys. But I'll just say Lauer, even though I hope it's Peralta. So, all right, moving on to the seventh inning. This is just a random one, but you can pick the over or the under on the number of wins that Josh Lindblom gets in 2021. Over or under? Or no, not wins. I'm sorry. Starts, actually, not even wins.
Okay.
The over-under on the number of starts that Josh Lindblom gets as a Milwaukee Brewer in 2021 is, I'm going to set it at 12 starts. Over or under?
Oh, over for sure. Yeah, over for sure. I think that he's a guy that, we signed him to that 3-year deal. I don't think it was to sit in the bullpen. So, yeah, I'll say over.
I'm going to say under. I just think he's.
No, I'm not saying he deserves it, Craig. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I know. No, you're probably going to be. No, I mean, I would bet the over if I was betting, but for some reason, I think it's going to be under. I think he's going to show that he's not even worthy of being a back end starter, unfortunately, and that they've got those other young guys that we mentioned in the last inning question that they could, plug into those spots. So, and possibly if any other free agents coming in. So I think he might end up being just like that, middling long reliever type guy, and therefore not get that many starts. But I hope I'm wrong and he emerges and is more helpful than that. But anyway, I'll take the under for that reason. But if I had to bet, you're probably right. He'll get more than that. All right, eighth inning. When Scott's here, we usually do this. He's so fast at this. We usually, fly through it.
Oh, I know.
Taking our time on that a little bit, but
he really puts the rapid fire.
Yeah, so that's all right. We'll expect him back next time. All right, eighth inning. Who do you think is the best GM in Brewers history?
Harry Dalton. I mean, he's the only Brewers GM that's gotten us to the ALCS, or beyond the ALCS, I should say, and to a World Series. I think, given what he did with the team prior to the 1978 season, his hiring of George Bamberger at the right time, his bringing in Harvey Keene at the right time in 1992, he made a couple of successful, big, controversial at the time trades where, he traded our best prospect at the time was a guy named David Green to the Cardinals as the centerpiece of a trade for Raleigh Fingers and Ted Simmons. I know that St. Louis ended up winning the World Series in '82, but he really fleeced the Cardinals that year, getting not only Simmons and Fingers, but also Pete Vukovich. So 2 Cy Young Award winners, 2 Hall of Famers in the trade. I mean, I just think that, again, if it wasn't for the weird playoff format of 2020, we never would have made the playoffs. And then, Stearns would have 2 playoff appearances under his belt in an expanded format. Dalton has had 2 back-to-back playoff appearances in '81 and '82. And under the current rules of who makes the playoffs, he would have had a bunch more in '78, I think in '79. I mean, I'd have to look at the exact records that year, but, if there was a wild card, for instance, that existed in those seasons and a couple others, he would have had a ton of playoff appearances. So I don't think that Stearns has done anything yet to eclipse Harry Dalton.
Yeah, I totally agree with your total assessment. Harry Dalton in that one trade is pretty phenomenal. Whenever you can say 2 Hall of Famers on our side in a trade, that's got to be amazing, and that's going to be tough to top in franchise history. With that being said, the Stearns trade to acquire Christian Yelich is probably going to be number 2, if not, right up there with
Yep.
best trades in franchise history. And again, that was more to the Marlins' discredit than probably Stearns' credit. But I mean, it was a phenomenal trade. But yeah, he would still probably finish at least at the best third on my list. So I mean, I think Doug Melvin and what his tenure here with the Brewers was still even, probably second best, well behind Dalton. But and his best trade is probably, acquiring Cease to make that amazing run. But overall, I think he had a good mark on the organization as a GM, and obviously that was again our Brook Review heyday too.
Oh yeah,
got a soft
for
spot
sure.
him.
Me too. No, I love Doug Melvin. I think that he was a good GM, especially for the time, that he came in for the franchise. So no question about that. And keep in mind, he took over for Dean Taylor after that woeful season in 2002. I mean, my God, it couldn't have gotten much worse. And within a few years, Doug Melvin had them respectable, and another year or two after that, he had them in the postseason. So, no, I have a soft spot for Melvin as well, and I think that Stearns has done great. Overall, his last, in his short tenure, but time will tell on him.
Yeah, but I think we'll have a good one going forward with Matt Arnold. No, but the one thing that I guess I didn't want to really ding Doug Melvin for this, but I thought it was a little bit unprofessional how he used to always laugh at our colleague Tom Hordicourt because of how ridiculously unprepared, and some of his interviews he had with him was pretty unprofessional. And Doug Melvin
totally.
would kind of just laugh in his face and kind of thought, I think he kind of thought Tom Hordicourt was an asshole, and I don't know. I just don't really think that that's as professional as a GM should be. But I mean, when you're dealing with members of the media that obviously shouldn't be in that position, I mean, I can't fault them too much for that. But that's probably cost them the top spot here on my list, I'm sure. But no,
he wasn't wrong. I mean, okay.
Yeah, Harry Dalton didn't have to deal with that type of shit, so I don't know. But
so true.
Anyway, yeah. So no, that's all I got for this episode, Vince. I mean, kind of breaks my heart that Scott wasn't here for this, but hopefully.
Yeah, no, I agree, Craig. Good to talk some baseball with you. On a personal note, and for our listenership, I'm really happy that you've recovered from your bout with COVID-19. Stay safe out there, everybody. It's been a crazy few weeks for our hosts here on the Brew Crew Review. So glad to hear that you're feeling better, Craig.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't want to go all Chris Cuomo on you guys and like make you go through all that with me, so I didn't want to really highlight it. But I guess I will say that I'm thankful to be beyond that, and that I highly recommend you not acquiring the virus, no matter what your age is. And please be safe out there and do everything you possibly can to not get it. That'll be my short of it, so to speak. Definitely.
Yeah, man. No, really, really glad that you're recovered. I know that we'll get back into the swing of things here as the Hot Stove League picks up. Really excited to talk baseball on a regular basis with you and Scott and Chad, and just ready to get back into it. And it's only been, a month, not even, since the last baseball game of the 2020 season, but I'm already getting excited for 2021. I'll try to tamper down my enthusiasm and really get excited after Christmas, but really excited for the discussions that we're going to have coming up in the ensuing weeks, and the Hot Stove League, and who knows, maybe the Brewers will surprise us and make some moves this offseason, and David Stearns will pull a rabbit out of his hat one more time, and we'll put together an actual competitive team in 2021. But either way, I'm just excited for some baseball and some normalcy next spring.
Absolutely. And as we approach the winter meetings here, I know that in the holidays, of course, the last year David Stearns kind of hit up obviously the bargain bin part of the free agency pretty early on in the off season. I think late November, early December, you made a lot of those signings. So I would kind of expect that by the next time maybe we do a podcast, that there'll already be some actual moves made here by Stearns, and some things will come together. But I think that big fish is definitely going to be Josh Hader dangling out there, and it'll be really interesting to see if indeed he gets traded and what we get for him. So it'll be exciting, and but hopefully here we can bring some more content during the off season, beyond the winter meetings, and maybe some player interviews going forward and whatnot. And of course, the return of Scott Bartell and potentially Chad Collins from hibernation at some point. But definitely want Scotty back here as soon as possible. I know he's going to be crushed that he missed the Rap at 9. That's one of his favorite segments. But anyway, he's a busy man with lots of errands to run and, dogs to groom and all that stuff. So, we expect him back. So, Vince, I know that we have an active Twitter and all that good stuff. So I don't know if you want to mention that stuff.
Yeah, no, thanks, Craig. Yeah, Brew Crew Review 1 is our Twitter handle. Send any questions. I know that Scott and the interns are actively monitoring that. Brew Crew Review Podcasts with an S at gmail.com. You can continue to follow us on there, and we will try to update that as often as possible, and certainly try to update that as any Brewers or baseball news comes out. So we do appreciate you listening. Remember to stay classy, Wisconsin. Go Brewers.
Go Brewers.